Okay, since I got all those Batman games under my belt, figured it's time we talk about another game about a billionaire playboy genius. Iron Man, one of Marvel's premier members of the Avengers and one of their hottest properties as of late. It seems hard to imagine, but there was a time when old Shellhead wasn't the center of attention. It was more or less a B-list superhero. All that changed back in 2008 when the character made his cinematic debut, which not only skyrocketed his popularity, but have also kicked off a series of films which have been around for over 10 years and are still continuing to this very day. Another trope of the time is that with major movie blockbusters, there would usually be a video game that would accompany its release. And that was definitely the case with Iron Man and some other Phase 1 MCU movies, which were published by Sega, which... you know who they are. For this video, we're primarily focusing on the Xbox 360 version. There is a PS2 version as well, but that deserves a video all to itself. Can the Armored Avenger deliver? Well, let's find out. Start the video proper.
So I'm not going to give a plot recap because it follows the plot of the film, and also, just watch the movie. They did get some talent from the movie to voice their video game counterparts, including Gwyneth Paltrow, Terrence Howard. Hell, they even got Robert Downey Jr. for the cutscenes only.
Why?
It's probably a good thing Jeff Bridges wasn't brought in, although I will say that his stand-in for Shore is the only one who has any real effort put in. As for Jarvis, they definitely got a robot to play him.
I've been given a second chance, and look, I'm using it to kick some ass.
Do not understand ass-kicking reference, sir.
Remind me to give you some kind of personality, Jarvis.
The last thing I'm going to note is the villains they added, which include Titanium Man, Madam Mask, and even Whiplash before they put him in the sequel, which is kind of surreal, honestly.
So, on to the gameplay.
I figure we'll start with flight because you'll be doing this the most. So to hover, you need to hold the left trigger halfway, and to gain altitude, that requires you to pull the trigger all the way. In a hover, you can dodge missiles and such by holding the A button, and to fly ahead, you do that by holding the left bumper. While flying, you can boost by holding the A button, and damn does it come in handy. Honestly, I really enjoy flying around in this game. It takes some getting used to, and it can be disorienting at first, but you'll get the hang of it in no time. Moving on to combat, you can fire your repulsors by holding the right trigger, and as for your unibeam, you'll press and hold the right bumper. You can fire missiles with the Y button and punch with the B button. Also by holding the B button, you can tear apart vehicles and such and perform a takedown on ground enemies. Honestly, it kind of feels pointless doing anything other than holding the right trigger. The unibeam leaves you wide open while having an incredibly slow charge up, and punching things isn't necessary, especially when you're in the air most of the time. Besides that, all of your methods of attack just feel really weak, which is just plain wrong, especially since you're Iron Man. Speaking of useless, you can divert power to flight, weapons, etc. with the press of the D-pad. It's just that nothing feels different when you do this, and you'll probably forget about it as you continue through the game. Overall, the controls are really comfortable, and it's probably my favorite aspect of the game. Despite not using anything other than the triggers, nothing is overly complicated to pull off, and it just feels really smooth and responsive.
I guess we can go over the other stuff. Which isn't much.
So there's 13 missions in total, with most of them consisting of you fighting hordes of drones, tanks, or a boss battle. Variety in location isn't really a thing either. Most of the time it's just a desert, but every once in a while you'll visit some other places, including a cityscape, an Arctic base, or even a flying carrier, which is probably my favorite level. Bosses aren't really worth mentioning, since most of them go down like your typical enemy, except for the last one. Fuck you, Obadiah. As for regular enemies, it's the usual robots, jets, soldiers, etc. But that leads into my biggest issue I have with this game.
So before I started recording footage, I decided to try the game out on normal, just to test it out, and the first couple missions weren't that bad, but as soon as I got to mission 3, that's when all my memories came flooding back onto why picking normal is wrong.
Literally everything is thrown at you, including the kitchen sink, and it's goddamn irritating. They probably didn't want this game to be a cakewalk, but jeez, they went overboard with all the bullets, bombs, and shit coming towards you. Another issue I have with the levels is that they're just too damn short. Assuming you don't care about the side objectives, which are a thing, and you're just focusing on the main missions, you can beat the game in just a few hours, which is ludicrous no matter what game you're playing, especially for a game released in 2008 of all years. So after every level, you earn a certain amount of money depending on how much you do, which in turn you can use to buy upgrades, and they're meh. I just don't see much of a difference, and if I do, it's only a slight improvement. The only other thing to do in this game is the one-man army mode, which is... well, let me explain it. Basically, you're set in an area which you have to kill 80 enemies in 10 minutes. I'm gonna repeat that. 80 enemies in 10 minutes. They aren't worth playing, but if you do beat them, you earn a pretty kick-ass reward. Each mission unlocks a comic book outfit for you to wear, and these are pretty nice. My favorites are definitely the extremist suit, the classic armor, and this unique Hulkbuster design made specifically for this game. Another thing to note is that 2 of these outfits are platform exclusive, so if you have a 360, it's the Silver Centurion armor, and for PS3 owners, you get the Ultimate armor. Even though the suits look alright, everything else does not. From bland environments to low quality models, even the cutscenes look bad. I mean, look at anemic Pepper Potts and shit-faced Tony Stark.
Guess that falls in line with Tony being an alcoholic.
Last thing to talk about is the music. It sucks. It's just the most generic stock music you can find in a mediocre action movie. They don't even have the Iron Man theme. Even the PS2 version had it, which is more or less a crime in some parts of the world.
Alright, anyway, what are my final thoughts on this game?
Iron Man the game is bad on pretty much all fronts, but if I'm being honest, there's a few things that I could still have fun with. The game controls like a dream, and the suits are a nice bonus, but everything else is lackluster to say the least. From the ball-busting enemy AI, ugly design, non-existent plot, and voice acting which could be done better by a plank of wood, it's probably in your best interest to leave this one wherever you find it. If you somehow have an interest, try and spend less than $5, since I feel it isn't worth any more than that.
Well, that was an interesting start to the Marvel Marathon. The next review, we're looking at a movie tie-in that people actually like. So with that said, next time we meet, it's X-Men Origins Wolverine's time to shine. Until then, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves. How's it going, everyone? And welcome back. We're continuing the Marvel Marathon with another movie tie-in, which is considered one of the best. This is X-Men Origins Wolverine. Uncaged Edition. For the Xbox 360. The best member of the X-Men and the Claude Canuck himself, Wolverine. Even with all the various incarnations of the X-Men, Wolverine has been the most popular member. With the movies, they also pretty much made him the main character. So with a solo movie on the horizon, a video game tie-in was sure to follow, but since the movie went through multiple production delays, the game would be pushed as well, causing the developers to have some time to polish up the game and turn out a great final product. Speaking of the developers, Raven Software is at the helm. You may know them from games such as the X-Men Legends series and the first Marvel Ultimate Alliance, so they're actually a great fit for this character. Like I mentioned at the start, we'll be looking at the Uncaged Edition, which was released for the Xbox 360, PC, and PS3. A full warning, this is an M-rated title with lots of blood and gore, so if you're somewhat squeamish, I recommend you skip out on this video. Alright, with that said, let's pop our claws and slash our way into the video.
Like last video, no plot recap, since like last video it follows the film's story, but unlike last video it's expanded in all the right ways. It can be confusing since it jumps all over the place, but the inclusion and reworks from the movie makes the experience better overall. Another thing that really sells it is Hugh Jackman reprising as well as Wolverine, and he does a fucking fantastic job. All of his delivery is on point and nothing feels shoehorned in. Same can't be said for Liev Schreiber and will.i.am, who do a better job than most actors brought in, but clearly they aren't into it as much.
Alright, on to the gameplay, and I'm very excited.
If you're familiar with games such as God of War or Devil May Cry, you'll definitely feel right at home, and it's one of my favorite things about this game. You have your standard light and heavy attack, jump, grab, and block buttons. When you grab an enemy, you can perform a finishing move, and if you have good timing with blocking, you can deflect things such as blades and missiles. All these things together work really well for Logan, and it's honestly so much fun ripping people to shreds. There's also dash and roll maneuvers, but I don't really find myself using them unless it's necessary. Now to talk about my favorite move in the game, the lunge. If a goon is too far away, you can basically super jump over to them for a kill, and I never get tired of doing this move. Doesn't matter the situation, I will always take the opportunity to do it even if it isn't needed. By holding the right trigger and pressing certain face buttons, it allows you to perform special moves that'll help you dish out the pain even more. These include the Claw Drill, which is good for covering distance in a fight, a Berserk mode, which makes you more powerful and something I use for bosses, the Claw Cyclone, which I don't really find myself using much, and the Claw Spin, which is my personal favorite of the bunch. All these are incredibly fun to abuse, but just be aware of the yellow meter under your health.
You'll get lost in the madness. Trust me.
You can also utilize Wolverine's feral senses, which helps direct you on where you need to go and makes certain things stand apart, like environmental hazards. It's basically detective mode from the Batman Arkham games. By the way, go watch my reviews if you haven't already. As you slice and dice, you'll earn XP, and upon leveling up, you'll earn points which you can spend in the game's skill tree. All the upgrades definitely make an impact and aren't completely useless, unlike a certain game we talked about last time! Sorry. Like I mentioned, this combat system is incredibly entertaining and somewhat cathartic, so if you're looking to relieve some stress, I recommend you trying out this game. One thing I don't recommend is playing the game in long sessions, because even though I do like the combat, the game will test your patience, especially later on with certain levels and enemy types. Play in short bursts, and I promise you'll have a better experience overall.
So, with that, let's move on to the other stuff and forget that burst of anger just happened.
So there's 5 chapters with a certain number of levels for each of them. I can't count. Levels can be incredibly fun with some nice set pieces including a Weapon X facility, a hidden sentinel factory in the desert, even a casino that's under construction. I think the frozen wilderness has to be my favorite area of the game. It just speaks to me and reminds me of the good old wilderness of home. Not to mention killing people with tree branches feels strangely satisfying. The only levels that I don't enjoy are the flashback jungle levels. They're just so uninteresting and feel like they take forever to complete. After a while it just gets annoying, especially after you finish a really good level and they force you back there.
Well, here's something to forget about. Hey Striker, do your thing. Hey, maybe one more just for good measure. Very good.
Within the levels are certain collectibles including dog tags which give you XP and mutagens which help boost certain abilities. Can't say I noticed much when the mutagens are equipped, but the dog tags are definitely useful and I recommend grabbing them whenever you find them. Enemies are whatever. Most of what you'll be dealing with is armies of soldiers, and even when they break away from that, they aren't really there long enough to be substantial. Out of the soldiers, the ones I find most interesting are the ones with daggers and the invisible guys that require you to use your senses to see them. Bosses are a mixed bag for me. The ones where you're fighting actual characters can be fun, but way too often you'll fight either Wendigo monsters or magma creatures and it gets annoying really early on. The undisputed highlight, of course, is the giant sentinel, and I'd like to point out that Sabretooth literally has all of Wolverine's animations and nothing else.
Huh. And I thought X-23 was the clone.
Graphics are actually really impressive for a movie tie-in game, but if there's anything that hurts the presentation, it would be the frame rate. Most of the time it lags behind slightly, but when there's lots of things happening on screen, it really becomes distracting. It's probably the weakest part of the game, but let's move on to one of the best. In the levels there are these Wolverine action figures. Collect a certain number of them and you'll be able to fight another Wolverine for the chance to unlock an alternate costume. Not only are these the best Wolverine costumes, but it definitely helps with coming back for multiple playthroughs. My go-to is the classic suit, but I still really like the X-Force outfit and that sexy Canadian brown. I guess the last thing to really mention is the DLC. You see this lock space here? This was a bonus area known as the Weapon X Arena, which was basically an enemy rush. Because Activision lost the license for the Marvel properties, it was unfortunately pulled from digital storefronts, and as far as I know, there's no way to get this. If there is, please let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious.
What are my final thoughts? Well, if you haven't really clued in yet, let me tell you.
X-Men Origins Wolverine is an incredibly fun hack and slash that does justice to the character and takes the material it's based on and actually improves upon it. I will say the game is bare in terms of content, and it can get repetitive, but the combat system alone is so enjoyable it makes me care less about the game's problems. Just about everything Logan can do is extremely satisfying to pull off, and the added costumes are a great bonus. This is definitely worth a playthrough or two, and if I can recommend anything, it's to take your time and to keep your eye out on dog tags and action figures. The game is a little hard to come by, but it's worth the price for sure.
Man, could you imagine if we had a new next-gen Wolverine game? That'd be pretty sweet. Well, too bad that's never happening. Alright, next time we're looking at something original for a change. So, next time we meet, we're looking at the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. With that said, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves. What the hell? That was a crazy night. Are we recording right now? Anyway. How's it going, everyone? And welcome back. So, we're moving along in the Marvel Marathon, and this time we're taking a break from movie tie-ins and looking at an original title, and one of my personal favorites. It's The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Ah, my head. Gotta say, I love this big angry lug. Even back then as a little kid when I was terrified of him, I related a lot since I was angry and pissed off all the time. Siblings will do that to you. Eventually I would grow out of that fear, and I think one of the things that helped was this game. After the disappointing turnout of the 2003 movie tie-in game. The folks over at Radical Entertainment, who were also responsible for The Simpsons Hit and Run, decided to take another crack at the character with a new approach, which was basically taking the Spider-Man 2 route. Making an open world game that fits with him in mind and make it fun as hell in the process. The game would see release in August 2005 and gained immense praise from both critics and gamers alike, and the gameplay would later be the basis for the prototype franchise. This is also one of the games that defines the blockbuster rental phase of my childhood. That and MK Armageddon, but we don't talk about that here. For this video, we're going to be focusing on the Xbox version of the game. I do own and am most familiar with the PlayStation 2 version, but my PlayStation 2 itself unfortunately won't read discs anymore, and the Xbox version is widely regarded as the best version to play, so we're just going to stick with that. Old sweet PlayStation 2. Rest in peace, old friend.
Hey everyone, just doing a quick unscripted editor's note, because between the time of writing this script and doing the review, I've gotten a PS2 from my close friend Jace, and yeah, but I figured because I already had a copy on the Xbox, we figured we'd just continue with that anyway. So anyway, back to the video.
Well, after all that, let's begin the review proper and look at the story. But first, I'm going to find something to nurse this headache, and you change your clothes. Throw out these jeans while I'm at it.
The game begins with Bruce Banner self-isolating in the desert. What a good guy. After being attacked by Emil Blonsky in the military, Banner makes his way over to his pal Samson, who agrees to help build a machine that'll help Bruce finally get rid of the Hulk once and for all. Unfortunately, all the equipment we need is held in top-secret government locations, so with the help of mental implants, the guys use the Hulk to their advantage by having him complete certain tasks, and that's pretty much the majority of the game. It's a very standard Hulk plot, and it honestly isn't very interesting to me. It's mostly an excuse to go to the next level, and it all leads to a very anticlimactic end, with all the work leading to nothing and a very better luck next time conclusion. There are a couple of secondary plots like Emil turning into the Abomination and the emergence of the Devil Hulk, and these aren't really too engaging either. The Devil Hulk stuff feels kinda shoehorned in to pan out game time, and the Abomination could have been avoided if Blonsky didn't touch the canister like a fucking idiot. I know I would usually give a plot summary for this kind of game, but the story just feels empty. It's almost like they had to put something together for the sake of having a story, so most of it just feels like a bunch of cobbled together ideas that feel half-baked and don't even tie into each other. There's also some things that just feel flat out unnecessary and don't need to be there at all. You could take Blonsky's wife Nadia out and it wouldn't change anything in the slightest. I guess the files in the main menu would have helped, but I don't think it would have changed my opinion much. Gotta say, they got some talented individuals for the voice cast, including Ron Perlman as Emil, who is the highlight for me, and they even got Neil McDonough, who reprises his role as Bruce Banner from the animated series. I really like who they got for Samson, and the Devil Hulk sounds menacing as hell.
Probably wasn't expecting that, or this, but let's move on to gameplay.
Alright, I guess I'll start with combat since it's the main thing you'll be doing throughout the game, and hey, Hulk smash, right? So for light attacks, you hit the X button, and with the Y button you can execute heavy attacks. B allows you to pick up objects, and hitting it again will throw that object wherever you're facing. You also have a lock-on with the L trigger, which is incredibly useful and something you'll be using all the time. It can be a little finicky periodically, but most of the time it'll target what you want and help you a ton, especially during boss fights. Overall, combat is very simple on the base level, but what I think makes it so enjoyable and fun to go back to is the amount of experimentation you can do. As you keep playing and buying upgrades, you'll have new combos and special moves to try out on enemies, and just about all of them are really effective. My favorite move to pull off is the super clap that wrecks everything it comes into contact with. I almost forgot to mention you can charge attacks and such, and this really helps for tanks and Hulkbusters, the fucking jerks. As for traversal, there's not much to go over since besides jumping with the A button, there's also your sprint with the R trigger. It's fun for sure, but that's it really.
Don't, really know what else to say. Yeah. Oh, did you know you can taunt with the black and white buttons? Yeah, that's a thing.
Last thing I want to tell you is it's a good idea to take a break every once in a while. Since you'll be holding in buttons most of the time, it can be a pain on your fingers, so just want to throw that out there. With that said, let's see what else this game has to offer. I accidentally put it as a voiceover line, so we're just going to do it like this. I'm an idiot. First we'll go over the worlds you travel through. Besides the hub area with the church, you have the desert area known as the Badlands, and the city known as... City. They are a little small for my liking, and they don't have the same appeal as swinging through New York, but they're still fun to travel through nonetheless. Within these areas, you can do a number of things, including finding additional jump markers, finding comic book covers, which I'll get into soon, and playing minigames scattered around the map. After completing missions, smashing shit, and finding these tokens, you are awarded with this game's currency known as Smash Points. It's mainly just used for upgrades, so save up as much as you can and buy what suits you most. Speaking of missions... let's do this quickly. Missions have you do a variety of tasks, which mainly consist of smashing something, protecting something, or bringing an object back to the church. While lacking in variety, that's not the issue. Early on, these levels are relatively comfortable, but around the halfway mark, the difficulty spikes up dramatically, and you wonder if you're even playing the same game still. It might just be me being bad at video games, but it feels like after a certain point you hit a brick wall and everything just doesn't want you to finish the game. After a while, I tried putting in a code to double the health pickups, and even that wasn't enough. I did manage to finish the game, but holy fuck was I ready to split my controller in two with the amount of bullshit I encountered. It started with the escort mission with Samson, and it just got even worse from there. I recommend finding the comic covers for both double damage and double health, just to give yourself a fighting chance when you get to the latter half of the game. Okay, rant over. Speaking of which, now on to the comic covers, which besides rewarding you with Smash Points, they can give you a whole bunch of extras including double damage as mentioned before, cow missiles, giant gorilla balloons everywhere, and also costumes. These can range from different shorts representing different countries, or somebody like Joe Fixit, who is voiced by his animated series actor.
When you collect them all, you unlock the Grey Hulk, but major missed opportunity. No purple pants option. Shame.
Overall, the comic covers are a nice bonus and add some replay value. Kinda wish they unlocked your rewards right away instead of these passwords, but that's the only minor complaint. Bosses are lots of fun and I enjoy pretty much all of them. My favorites are the larger than life foes like the Devil Hulk, the final battle with Abomination, and General Ross. Graphics are good for the time, but have aged somewhat for sure. I would have preferred a cel-shaded approach like they did with Ultimate Spider-Man, but it's still good as is. Music is really good too, but not many pieces really popping in my head aside from the title theme. Of course.
Alright, time for my final thoughts. And...
I love this game. I love the gameplay, I love the sense of freedom, I love the cast, and I love just about everything this game has to offer. Now with that said, the story is still a low point, the difficulty spike is just absurd, and some mechanics haven't really aged so gracefully. But these to me don't really impact what is still a fundamentally solid experience that really makes you feel like a giant green rage machine. I'm imploring you to find a copy for whatever system you have, whether it be Xbox, PS2, or GameCube, because I promise you are in for a smashing good time. The game can be a little rare to find, but for the right price, it'll be worth it.
We're just about through with the Marvel Marathon, and next we see each other, we'll be swinging to the streets and taking a look at Marvel's Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. With that said, I hope you all have a great night, thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves. How's it going, everyone? And welcome back. We're on our last Marvel game in this marathon before the Avengers, and I decided to bite the bullet and look at Marvel's Spider-Man. The game, not the cartoon series. It's a little confusing. Besides the Dark Knight, I would say the Walloping Web Snapper himself is a favorite superhero of mine. And back during E3 2016 when his game was announced, I was hooked. It looked like it was taking what the Amazing Games did, but actually making it work. Insomniac Games was in charge of the project, and despite knowing their work with games such as Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet & Clank, Sunset Overdrive, and also the Resistance series, I didn't really play anything of theirs until this game was released. Before its release, I followed this game like the plague through various E3 demos, Paris Games Week, and even during the Game Informer coverage. I was so excited for this game that I decided to pre-order the Collector's Edition, and that was my first pre-order ever. But that's a story for another time. I was tempted to buy the limited edition PS4 Pro also, but seeing how I was saving up to buy a laptop at the time, it was kind of a one-choice thing. Upon playing the game, it was love at first sight, and also considering I spent the summer playing God of War, I needed something that wasn't ripping monsters to shreds. Despite playing the game over 7 times and getting kind of sick of it, I wanted to review this anyway because I thought it was best to get my opinions in sooner rather than later, and what's a Marvel Marathon without the Whitehead? For this video we're sticking with the PS4 original, but I will give a quick glance at the PS5 remastered version. I think I've rambled on long enough. It's time to kick this review into high gear and look at the story.
We begin this plot with our favorite hero and the police raiding Fist Tower to take in the Kingpin. After a really entertaining boss fight, Big Willie's incarcerated, which leaves a massive power vacuum in the criminal underworld, which is immediately filled by a group known as the Demons. After an attack on the rally, you find out that the leader of the gang, Mr. Negative, who has the power to corrupt people, is actually a super nice guy, Martin Lee, who runs the Feast Homeless Shelter. So, with the help of MJ, Peter begins his hunt to stop Martin and prevent him from causing any more chaos. It isn't going to be easy since the mayor, Norman Osborn, decides to call in Silver Sable and her cronies to help with the situation, and it leads to a lot of unnecessary banter. Honestly, I'm not really the biggest fan of Sable in this story. Besides the conflict that didn't really need to happen, everything she does ends up blowing up in her face and she's just flat out unlikable. The end with her bringing us to Feast kinda helped her out a bit, and I do like her design, but overall I could care less about her character. Eventually we find out Mr. Negative's plan is to unleash this chemical known as Devil's Breath in an effort to ruin Norman's reputation since he was created by Oscorp. He's also getting revenge since he's responsible for giving Martin his powers, which killed his parents. After an intense battle and a fun callback, Lee is taken to the raft and the day is saved! For a whole 5 seconds. During a massive prison rout, he's broken out alongside Electro, Rhino, Vulture, and Scorpion, forming the Sinister Six and being led by Dr. Octopus. Figure we should talk about him now, but you meet Otto very early in the game, and as it continues, you slowly see his descent into madness. Mostly from a combination of Norman, of course, and a disease that is slowly shutting his body down. It is very predictable and is something newcomers will probably see coming a mile away, but it is sad because you don't want him to turn evil. Him and Pete have such good chemistry and a great father-son relationship that makes the last scenes between them even more heartbreaking. Well, after tossing Spidey aside, Doc Ock releases Devil's Breath over the population, which causes New York to go to hell.
You know, I had a joke planned, but after seeing that, it feels kind of wrong saying it now.
So with that and the city being overrun by criminals, Spider-Man makes his way through the Sinister Six themselves, and after taking down Martin again, Octavius secures the anti-serum that Oscorp developed and also kidnaps Norman in the process. After recovering and getting his bearings, Peter and Otto have one last confrontation, which Peter obviously wins because
I'm Spider-Man.
Fuck's sake, get out of here, Toby. Christ. No! Bad, Toby, bad! You don't do that here.
with the anti-serum, Peter makes a choice that ends up saving the city, but it costs Aunt May's life, who had gotten sick earlier in the game. She reveals she knows his secret and tells him she's proud of him as he sits with her in her final moments. Time passes with the city being cured, Miles revealing that he has powers, and Peter and MJ rekindling their relationship, ending the story of Marvel Spider-Man. Overall, the story is just plain great, and I would say it's right up there with Arkham Asylum's narrative. It isn't perfect since I feel they spent a little bit too much time with Mr. Negative, and I wish the Sinister Six had more to do while getting some extra screen time. I would also say it feels really safe for the most part, but I can understand this since you're starting a new franchise and you don't want to go completely overboard. Same thing happened with Asylum, and look how that turned out. One major positive I would say are the characters that join you along the way. Not even just the villains, but also the side characters too. Some of them, like Mary Jane, Aunt May, and Yuri Watanabe, I really enjoy very much. Miles and Norman are fine for the most part, and Sable, well, you know. The cast just do a great job overall, but the standouts for me, of course, are Spider-Man and Doc Ock respectively. Yuri Lowenthal gives such a sincere and heartfelt performance, and his Peter is so charming and such a badass in costume. William Salyers makes you really feel bad for him while also being an intimidating bad guy as well. This is probably one of my favorite versions of the character, and I would say it's better than Spectacular's Dr. Octopus.
Yes, I did just say that. And on that, let's move over to gameplay.
I'm gonna start with combat, cause I can. You have your main attack with square, a web strike with triangle, which is really useful for long distance enemies, and a dodge, which is crucial for every fight. You can jump to, which you'll be using to take on airborne enemies. As you keep fighting, you'll fill up a meter under your health bar, which you can either use to heal yourself by pressing down on the D-pad, or to execute a special takedown on your foes. Lastly, you can zoom in and aim with L2, and use webs and gadgets with R1, which is a thing that works. Overall, the combat is simplistic but immensely satisfying. It feels like they took a bunch of ideas from the previous Spider-Man games and mixed it with some of their own bits and flair. Just for some examples, you got the Spider-Man 2 dodge, wall attacks from Ultimate, and even the web strike, which is fine but isn't as good as Web of Shadows or even Shattered Dimensions for that matter.
Hell, even the swing kick is lifted right at a friend or foe. See?
Also, I know some people will bring this up and say it's just another Arkham clone, which I can see where they're coming from, but I feel like there's enough here to make it distinct, with it relying more on gadgets and agility rather than brute force. Next up is stealth, which mostly consists of webbing dudes up on perch points. I mean, there's more to it than that, and I would say the core mechanics are okay, but most of these sections can be really easy, or you can just fight everybody and disregard it entirely. Another thing I miss is being able to take out people on the walls and the ceiling, so variety is a little lacking in that sense. Like I said, it's alright, but it could be better. Let's look at the gadgets, which there are a good number of them with varying levels of usefulness. Let's start with the normal web shots that actually works compared to the previous games that didn't really know what to do with them. After making the advanced suit, you unlock impact webs, which is probably my favorite tool to abuse. especially in stealth sections. There's spider drones, which I don't find myself using much, electric webs, which I find completely useless, web bombs, which are really good in large crowds, trip mines, which I never use outside of stealth, concussive blasts, which are meh, and lastly this suspension matrix, which I never use by itself. That leads into one of my favorite things to do, which is combining gadgets together, like using concussive blasts after a web bomb, and throwing trip mines with guys suspended in the air. Overall, the gadgets can be really hit or miss, but I like the inclusion of most of them. Now onto the traversal, which is really entertaining and also somewhat relaxing as well. R2 is the swing button as usual, but you can also use it as a sprint when you're on the ground. Tapping X says you do a web zip to keep you airborne, and hitting both triggers allows you to zip to certain points when an icon pops up which you can jump off at the right time. I've spent so many hours swinging around Manhattan in this game, but compared to the other titles, it just barely beats Ultimate for me personally.
Well, I guess we can move on to the other step. Oh, fuck.
Besides swinging around, you can also play as your alter ego and do things like walking around, clean up messes, or do puzzles which just feel completely unnecessary. I don't mind some variety, and I like the idea of playing as the hero without the mask, but I feel with Peter there's just not much here, and the puzzles are just not fun at all. Oh, but he's not the only playable character, since you can play as Miles Morales before the spider bite and Mary Jane Watson. So these two primarily focus on stealth, and in the case of Miles, I don't think his missions are too bad. They aren't very long, and they can be creative with their set pieces. MJ, however... What the fuck happened here? If it's not the length that'll bore you out, it's the enemy AI that'll catch you out of nowhere, or the patterns that feel random each time you play these levels. Just about every section has their fair share of bullshit, whether it's Tombstone's hideout, which I can never get a beat on, or something like Grand Central Station, which never seems to fucking end. Eventually you do get some items that attempt to help you out, but I feel they barely do anything. First is a lure that Peter gives you, which distracts goons for just a second, and a taser which you get the last time you play as her. Miles gets a hacking amp, which will distract enemies, but like the lore, it doesn't really last long either. In short, I never look forward to these sections, and I kinda hope for future games they're either reworked to be more fun, or just left out completely.
Alright, now we can go over the other stuff.
Let's begin with the graphics, because... goddamn, this game looks amazing. From environments to character models, everything looks top-notch, and I would say it's one of the best looking games from the PS4 library. The soundtrack is also great stuff too. Daredevil and Invincible composer John Pisano delivers a score that feels grand, heroic, and ultimately triumphant and heartwarming. If there's one piece I have a major issue with, it's the web swinging theme, but that's only because I've listened to it so many times to the point of it being kind of annoying.
Am I the only one that thinks of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show whenever I hear John Pisano's last name?
Do the Mario!
Please, stop.
Now onto the open world, which is probably one of my favorites in any superhero game. It's so rich and lively, and even though it may be intimidating with its size, they make use of it with the various collectibles and side missions, which I'll get into soon. Plus I really appreciate the sizable amount of famous Marvel landmarks from Avengers Tower to Alias Investigations.
You know what, after saying that, I kinda wanna watch some Marvel Netflix shows again. Okay, never mind.
With superhero games comes side quests, and this game has a fair amount of them. From stuff like raiding bases and doing Taskmaster challenges, you can take pictures of landmarks, find backpacks with relics that help world build, complete research stations for Harry, and chase down and capture pigeons. Besides that, you can also complete missions that involve me helping locals and taking down people like Tombstone and Screwball.
You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take this gun, and I'm gonna kill her for good.
Aside from you-know-who, these missions range from being fine at its lowest, to actually really entertaining, with my favorite being the fake Spider-Man. Some others, like the backpacks and research stations, I like too. The Black Cat stakeouts, landmarks, and hideouts are just kind of whatever, and I still don't know why they thought chasing pigeons was worth putting in the game. Although admittedly, I have fun with it. You can also stop crimes, which is your usual fare of car chases, drug busts, and such. Kinda wish there was a bit more variety with stuff like ambushes and...
Get
Here's my issue with the crimes. They count towards your percentage. Normally this doesn't bother me, but it becomes excruciating when there's 4 factions that have 5 crimes apiece in every single district. Christ, this is so frustrating and is easily the worst part of the game for me. It becomes especially bad when you leave all the crimes after you beat the game, so I recommend you do the crimes right when the factions pop up, assuming you're going for 100%. By doing crimes and stuff, you'll earn tokens which you can use to unlock gadgets, suit mods, plethora of alternate costumes, which is actually a great incentive for doing the side missions. I love just about every outfit, with my favorites being the Raimi suit, Last Stand, All New All Different, and vintage costumes just to name a few. There are some real letdowns like the Spirit Spider and the Undue suit, which is your 100% reward. Honestly, would have preferred the ESU costume in its place. Certain outfits unlock suit powers which you can use for combat, stealth, and traversal, and the coolest part is you can equip them with any suit you choose. I don't mind most of them, but the real standout ones for me are the Web Blossom and the Spider Burrow ability you get from the Homecoming suit. You can also equip suit mods to help you out, which like the powers I don't mind most of them, but I have my favorites like the Perfect Dodge for example. Bosses are alright, I guess. They aren't bad, but most of it boils down to hitting them at the right time, and it gets repetitive. I wish they were a little more creative, especially with the Sinister Six members. Now onto the photo mode, which is the best photo mode I've used in a game. So many amazing options to take advantage of, and even though I suck at photo mode, here are some I took for this video. There are benchmarks which I don't give a shit about, and there's DLC in the form of the City That Never Sleeps, which is fine overall. More on that another day. Hey, it's Future Marvel. I had a transition for the remaster, but I wasn't able to use it because some things changed, so... And also I didn't feel like busting out the whole camera setup, so... Yeah, we're just gonna do it like this. So yeah, here is the remaster for PlayStation 5. Alright, I'm not going to spend too much time here since I don't own it, but it would have felt wrong to me not to at least give it a mention. So everything I say is mainly based on what I've seen so far. First, like gorgeous visuals. Lighting still throws me off a bit, but the models just look so crisp and beautiful. All the options with fidelity and performance are amazing, and the added suits are a nice bonus.
You know what? I changed my mind. Let's talk about the city that... Oh, I have to talk about this.
So, when it was first shown off, I wasn't a huge fan of the change. Even on my podcast, I expressed my distaste for it, but over time I've warmed up to it, especially after playing Miles Morales.
I know everybody's not going to be on board with this change, and I can totally accept that. But if you're going to go out of your way to harass the developers just because you can't handle the fact that Peter looks different, sad to say that maybe the internet isn't really the best place for you.
This is definitely worth revisiting at a later date, since there's only so much that can be said from just looking at it. But from what I've seen, it looks like a great remaster, and if you're interested in getting it for your PlayStation 5, it's included with the Ultimate Edition of Miles Morales. I know some people are going to ask me, but yes, I am aware of the PC version of Marvel Spider-Man. I don't own it since I'm broke at the moment, and I just didn't bother. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to my pal Swifty for supplying me with the remastered footage. Not only for story segments, but also for free roam as well.
Now, on to my final thoughts.
This game is amazing. The story is spectacular, the combat is sensational, the world surrounding you is superior, and it all comes together to bring us the definitive Spider-Man experience. I thought no Spidey game would beat Ultimate as my favorite, but god damn it, this game managed to do it and then some. I love so much of it, but there are issues for sure, like the repetition of side activities, and did I mention that they managed to fuck up wall crawling somehow? Although that it's still an astonishing action-adventure game that does the friendly neighborhood web-slinger justice. I can't recommend this enough for anybody looking for a great superhero game, but I would also suggest it to people who just want a great game in general. Whether you have a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5, play this so you too can be a webhead.
Wow, that was a wild ride. But we're not just done yet, because next time we're talking about the Avengers game. Kinda worried how things are gonna go down, but hopefully things work out for the better. But until then, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves. What? Oh. Come on, did you really think I was talking about Marvel's Avengers? Of course not. I was talking about this. Right here. Avengers Battle for Earth. Well, better start the review before people start unsubscribing. So we can't really talk about this game without at least mentioning the cancelled Avengers game that was being developed by THQ. It was a first-person brawler/shooter with an emphasis on co-op and an original story based around the Secret Invasion storyline. Due to THQ's financial struggle and eventual shutdown, it resulted in the game following suit and the rights being handed over to Ubisoft. And after 6 months in development, Avengers Battle for Earth was crapped out onto store shelves for the Kinect and later the Wii U. When I got my Wii U back in December of 2013, this was one of the first games I ever played on the system, and one of the first titles I bought from the eShop. That and Punch-Out! It was a weird time back then. My memories for this game mostly consist of getting 100% and managing to get all the characters and costumes with whatever eShop credit I can get my hands on.
Hi, just wanted to throw a quick note in here. I'm an idiot.
In case it wasn't obvious, I'll be looking at the Wii U version for this review. During my hiatus, I somehow managed to find a copy for the Xbox Kinect, so I'll be giving a quick look later on. Alright, let's get this video moving and talk about the campaign.
For this plot, the game is also based on the Secret Invasion, or more accurately, it uses the panels from the comic for its cutscenes. I know they didn't have a lot of time to develop anything, but this is just the laziest way to present a story. It's not like there's even much of it either. You get 4 minuscule cutscenes that barely tie into the stage itself, and that's it. They aren't even animated either, it's just a bunch of still images sliding across the screen. Not to mention they don't even match the game's aesthetic, so it sticks out like a sore thumb even harder. I can understand when the styling decision is made for like a mobile game because you don't really need much, but when you're making a console game based on one of the most popular franchises at the time, there needs to be something more. I would have preferred them making 3D slides with the in-game models because at least you're using the assets at that point and not just ripping an image from somewhere else. Hell, just bringing in an artist would have been enough.
Alright, I think I went on long enough about the cutscenes, but what about the actual campaign itself?
For stages we have Manhattan, the Baxter Building, the SHIELD helicarrier, the Savage Land, and a space station called the Peak. Most of them are pretty generic for a Marvel fighting game. The only one that feels like an interesting pick is the Savage Land, but it's still lame. One thing I want to note is that the missions are incredibly easy. They each have a difficulty that ranges from 1 to 5 stars, but I tried a few 5-star levels and I barely noticed much of a difference. Another thing about the campaign which is really strange is that there's 2 halves of it. Once you complete the first set of missions in every area, a second set will open up, and I never understood why it's set up like this. It's just a lame excuse to pad the game out, and thankfully I didn't play it all because, well, there's only so much garbage I can take. Okay, you got me there.
Gameplay time. Yay.
Most of this section will be focused on the gamepad, and while you can also use the Wiimote and Nunchuck, it's just the standard motion controls and I didn't really feel like using it. With the gamepad you'll be tapping icons, which includes a projectile of light I guess, and a super kick that'll launch your opponent high in the air. You also have 3 special moves which are performed by drawing out symbols and shapes and depending on how many you pull off. You'll fill up a meter which will either be a breaker at the halfway mark or a super move at its max capacity. With that is a combat system that not only sucks so hard, but is also one of the laziest things I've ever seen put together. You're just drawing stuff out and literally every character feels the same. There's nothing setting these characters apart besides them being their respective characters. Even a game like Marvel vs. Capcom knows that Hulk is a strong guy and Spidey can be quick on his feet. Another thing that bugs me is the camera angle. They decide to place it behind your character, which makes it feel less like a fighting game and more like a generic third-person shooter. Honestly, I don't know what else to say since there's not much here to begin with. You might be able to add some finesse with chaining combos, but most of the time you'll just be waiting for your special moves to not be on cooldown.
I guess I could talk about the other stuff, which, spoiler alert, isn't going to take up too much time.
You got your standard arcade mode and versus, which, whatever, they're there so you can do something with them. You also got challenges which are not fun and a tournament mode which you won't be able to utilize because nobody wants to play this game with you. Honestly guys, I don't know what else to really say here other than it's bad, because yes, there are extra bits here, but nothing is satisfying and it just leaves you feeling empty. I mean, what else can I mention here? Like, this game has DLC for some reason? Yeah, you could just buy your rewards, which is always fun, right? Oh yeah, might as well talk about the Kinect version for a quick second. It's even worse. Not only do your moves barely register, but even something as simple as navigating the menus is just an absolute chore. After 10 minutes I had to put it down, I was so fucking bored with it. So yeah, would not recommend it whatsoever.
Alright, I've went on long enough. Let's get through my final thoughts and then call it a...
Did someone say iron?
Hey, Zach? I hate to break it to you, but you're a little late to the party there, my dude. Yeah, the Iron Man video already came out months ago, so I don't really need you to do the whole cameo thing here.
Oh. Damn.
Yeah. Yikes. Is there any other reason why you're here?
Well, it was that, and, I was maybe gonna piss you off, hopefully.
Aren't you busy with your own channel?
I mean, kind of. It's just been a little crazy. And, I mean, you released the Iron Man review without me? Also, I gotta keep reminding you to do the, Gotham Knights review.
1, I'm not ready yet. 2, Groundhog Day, motherfucker. And 3, if I need you, I'll call. Now, can I please get back to closing the video?
Okay, well, just listen to Crossover Nexus or whatever I'm working on, please. I've been busy, man. Please, I need something.
Leave.
Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
Man. Something seemed off about him.
This game sucks. Period. The setup sucks, the execution sucks, the story is non-existent, the gameplay is mindless and repetitive, the extras are uninteresting, and the package overall is something you shouldn't invest in any way, shape, or form. I can't recommend this to anyone unless you're really curious or you want to torture your friends and family, which I won't ask. There are better examples of Marvel fighting games out there which you can get a lot more enjoyment from. Marvel Nemesis is a better game, and I would rather you play that even though it's bad as well. If you end up finding this game for whatever reason, just leave it in that dumpster and let it rot. Just like with Batman, I had my fair share of fun with this marathon. Most of these picks are based on my favorite Marvel characters, and despite the varying levels of quality, there are lots of things in these games that I can still enjoy despite their problems. Except for Battle for Earth, fuck that. This video was mostly a joke that I wanted to pull, which kinda blew up in my face since I just wanted it to end the more I kept playing. Even with that, I love the Marvel Universe and I'm excited for its future in all of its mediums. No matter what happens and what comes next, I will be there to assemble and face it head on. Just went on a little tangent there.
Honestly, it's kind of hard talking about this game without imagining what could have been. Well, we can all dream, right? Anyway, I'm going to be taking a break from marathons for now. I'm not sure what I'm going to be covering next, but it's going to be a DC game for sure. Until then, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves.